Adam Savage here in my cave with a show and tell of past artwork of mine. I was so delighted to read all of the responses to my box that houses the keys to hell. Truth, as I said on that video, that was like the last sculpture I made. But I refuse to say that I used to be an artist because of all sorts of reasons I've spoken to before, not part of this show and tell. However, I have what I consider to be, I think, one of the best sculptures that I made. It's one of my favorites, and I have a really amazing story about it. I have always been fascinated by lost texts, and specifically, I think the thing that galvanized my interest in it was The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. I read the book back in the 80s before the movie came out with Sean Connery and Christian Slater. Both the book and the movie are really worth watching. They're both amazing. But the book goes much deeper into the idea that there are these important things that we know about, like Plato's Commedia, I think it's Plato, maybe Aristotle, that we know existed because people have read about them and commented on them, and yet we don't have the original texts. That's fascinating to me because I'm sure in somebody's basement in Rome, there must be a copy of this somewhere, right? So I became really obsessed with those. It became a sort of a theme to me. And at a certain point, I thought, I want to make like a book that feels really old. And so I ended up making that book, and then ended up making this sculpture, which I call the Somnambulist's Travel Kit. So to start, this was an old sock drawer from a steamer trunk that I found on the street in New York and carried with me to San Francisco in 1990 when I came out here. And I love everything about it. I needed to do very little aestheticizing. I did have this piece of writing that I put in there of some, I think it's Japanese. I have no idea what it says, but it seemed evocative to me of an object that I didn't quite understand. And I made this book. And before I reveal the second part of this sculpture, we'll talk about this book. This book is built entirely from scratch. I used new canvas, new cardboard, some old leather belts, and some pieces, and I slowly painted it and turned it into this thing that felt really old and really, really satisfying and important. And then I thought about, like, what is this book? What could it be? And so then I kept this book as an active dream diary for 8 months. And I don't know if you've ever written down your dreams before as a recreational activity. I'm here to tell you, as a recovering dream chronicler, that the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the better you get out of it, the more you remember of every dream, and then you start writing down more, and then you remember more, and you write down more, and it becomes this vicious cycle. And at the time I stopped, which was, I kept this thing as an active dream diary for months, so I filled all of these pages. Every single one of these pages is something I wrote first thing in the morning, just as I woke up. And then I started waking up several times per night. I'd wake up after every dream, and I'd write down a dream, and I'd go back to sleep, and I started not getting enough sleep because I was so attuned to writing down my dreams. So here's the kind of thing that I would write. Mark, Dave, and I, and someone else are in a collector's apartment, art collector. We're there in a TV program or maybe a reality show. Anyway, we've been let in, and then she comes home, the collector. There are 3 or 4 of us, and we seem to be viewing the event on TV, but are also part of it. Very meta. I seem to also presage that I was going to end up on television. The collector comes home, the floors are marble, the ceilings are kind of low, but the place is at least 10,000 square feet. Huge! It just all nonsensical, wonderful dreams. And then, as I realized the book belongs in the box, I thought, what goes in the box? And then I thought, what would an 18th century dream chronicler want to travel with if they were going to seriously start keeping track of their dreams? And so I put in the things, an alarm clock, a compass for knowing which way you were pointing, an inkwell, candles and matches to light those candles. And again, everything in this is built from scratch and then weathered to look really old. What is the doll's hand doing here? That's part of a kind of a philosophy I have, that no box should be filled out of wholly utilitarian things, that you always need one kind of surreal object to catch your attention. And I actually did this in my blade drawer. You actually, come on over here, you can see. So when I made the foam core sorter for all the blades and knives, I included this weird central separator for this peculiar X-Acto blade handle that X-Acto made. And it's not that I use this all the time. I love its shape. It's shown up in a lot of special effects weapons over the years. But I love this weirdness of it being in the middle. And when I put this here, I was thinking of that doll's arm. Yeah, surreal. Oh, yeah. That's why that's there. So the pen here is, in fact, was a birthday present from my ex-wife. It's a Mont Blanc Meisterstück, and it is, yeah, it was an expensive birthday present back in the 90s, even more so now. A more beautiful writing implement I have never used. And in fact, I use this very pen to write down every one of these dreams in brown ink. But the story I want to tell you about this sculpture is a really, really good one. So I had this in an art show at my friend Catherine Cook's gallery when it used to be on Hayes Street. And after that group show, I brought it back to the theater I was working in. I was working at George Coates Performance Works at 110 McAllister near in the Hastings Law School building. And I brought this sculpture back, and like this, it was packed up and put over into a corner. And I think like 10 months went by. I kind of knew it was there, but I wasn't paying real attention to it. I didn't have a lot of room in the house that I was living in, so I was fine to store it over at the theater that I was working in. And to be clear, this theater at 110 McAllister is this giant vaulted ceiling, sprayed concrete theater from the early part of the 20th century. It's a really beautiful space, but it's like, there's holes in the walls because it used to be a dropped ceiling office, and there's all sorts. Basically, it feels kind of like an archaeological site, at least when we were working in it, at the same time as we were using it as an actual theater. So an object like this kind of fit in. Anyway, at a certain point, my friend Shane Cooper came up to me and said, Adam, someone told me you know about that red box that's in the tool room. What do you know about that red box? And I said, oh, yeah, Somnambulist travel kit, I built that. And he went, what? I said, I built it. And he goes, okay, dude, that thing has been freaking me out for like a week. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, I found this box in the corner of this building, and I saw this book, and I opened it up, and nothing made any sense. And it was clearly like 150 years old, and I couldn't figure out what the hell this was and where it had been found and what it meant. It's been freaking me out. And I realized, and I said, oh my God, Shane, you've had the most pure experience of this object that I could have possibly constructed. Because this object, all the mystery that I put into it, all the ways in which I gave it a narrative, it's all based on me rooting around in my grandmother's attic in Sneeden's Landing in the early 70s, finding my mom's ex-husband's telegraph machine and learning about what a telegraph machine was. It's that unpacking of the mind a kid does as they start to go through the detritus and the stuff of the world around them. And to be honest, I'm building these objects to fool myself and bring myself back to that state of being that kid exploring the world and learning about it and finding really cool mysteries and things. But I'm never going to really fool myself. But this box being placed in that location, in that room full of dusty artifacts from the past, put Shane into a state of mind where he enjoyed a kind of theater of the exploration of this book that is absolutely pure. like the only way for me to properly show my sculpture, I realized, would be to hide it in people's attics and find out maybe years later what they thought when they came across it, because that's the kind of experience that I'm looking for. And that is the Somnambulist Travel Kit. Thanks for watching.